All right, let's get started with Inventor. First, I'm just going to show you a little bit about how Inventor is organized and how it works. So here's what Inventor looks like on our computers. I'm going to double click and it takes a while. Again, it's a big program and it takes a little while to get started. But once it starts, we'll be able to look it over and see how it's organized. And it's not really organized in the way AutoCAD is. In Inventor, everything is an individual thing, a part, and so we have to be aware of that. So here it comes. They're going to say that they're paying attention to our privacy. I'm not sure, but we're on a school computer, so that's okay. So I'm going to do a new one. I'm going to start a new part. Click, and then it has to go, well, what kind of a new part? Okay, so we're going to do English US. There's all different templates for us. So we're going to use English US, and we're going to use the English version. There's metric, so if I want to use metric, and mold design is its whole thing. So we're going to just use English. And look, there are parts. Every part needs its own file. You can't add parts together in a part file. When you add parts together, it's called an assembly. So they have a whole system for adding parts together. Each individual part needs to be its own thing. And they have a special setup for sheet metal that works super, super well. Okay. In addition to that, in assemblies, they have mold assemblies, weldments, and standard. And then your drawings are a special thing. So everything needs its own file. And they all talk to each other, which means that they have to know where they are. So if I make an assembly out of some parts, those parts don't exist in this assembly, just where the parts are located in your files. So you have to have good knowledge of your files. The easiest way to do it, and the way we're going to do it, is everything's going to end up in one folder. Everything for a project. And you can see, you can set project file templates. Those keep track of it when you're not keeping track of it. But we're going to put everything in one folder. Be very, very clear and careful about that. I can't emphasize it enough. If you send me a drawing and you don't send everything that's included in the drawing is sort of dead. I can use a viewer to see it, but I can't check anything. Okay, so you have to send me everything when you submit something. Okay, so that's sort of how it works and how it's set up. This so depending on what you're making, you'll either make a part, an IPT file, or an assembly, an IAM file, or a drawing, an IDW file. And there are other files you can make. They have some pretty cool things available. Presentations are exploded views, and this nesting file is really, really a cool thing that we get into much later on. Okay, not in this class, not in a beginning class. Okay, so there we go. When you get started on a new file, you're going to go to English US and start a standard IPT file. Now let me show you what that looks like when it gets started. So as we start, there's a workspace. There's a whole bunch of ribbons that look sort of similar to AutoCAD, but they look solid instead of 2D. There's a sketching ribbon. Oh, now all of a sudden it looks like what you see in AutoCAD, right? All these AutoCAD tools. Okay, and you can annotate, you can do all sorts of different things to it, including stress analysis, but we're going to just be making parts. Okay, so this thing's called part one, and in part one, there are model states. Okay, those are basically ways of looking at the model from different angles and cutaways and styles. So there's model states so that you can go back and forth. Those are sort of like scenes in SketchUp. And then there's something called origin that tells you where different planes are. Okay, now right now I'm looking at it straight on from the front. So over here is your your view cube, and I usually look at it from different ways. I'm scrolling in and out. We'll learn more about that in another video. And then as you do things, each individual operation you do, if you make a shape or a feature, it ends up in a list over here. So that's how Inventor parts work, IPT files. And everything that's a single part, a screw is a single part. It takes its own file. A washer is its own part. It takes its own file. A block with a hole in it is its own part. It takes its own file. Okay, so that's the basics of how Inventor is organized.